It's always a tug in my heart towards music.
He could carry a tune as a little toddler.
I was just inspired by the music that I saw.
And it was an incredible feeling for me when I would see him at the altar, and sometimes broken and weeping and you know, just with his hands lifted.
I became cynical about church probably around 12 years old. I think there was a point when I just saw too much of the church politics, backtalk, gossip, and that was about the time some friends of mine were starting a band. The band started off as, you know, a bunch of Christian guys, but we all kind of suddenly realized that that wasn't who we really were and what we wanted to do, and so musically we started to kind of veer off into weird land. This is one of the clubs that I used to play at as a kid. 16, 17 years old, sneaking in. A lot of my anger at God, anger at the church, anger at myself was coming through the music. I would go to these clubs and start hanging out with older people and some of the wrong crowd, and drinking was involved. And so, I mean, my parents did the right thing. They were grounding me and they were saying, hey, that's gotta go. I left home when I was 17, Christmas.
We were at church. I remember we were at church and I didn't suspect a thing.
Well, it was Christmas Eve and I was part of a church play, but nobody knew that I had secretly arranged for some friends to be waiting in a car so that I could walk out off the stage and leave. And right behind me, that's the church that we were holding the Christmas pageant at. So I told them to take me anywhere but home.
I started looking for him after church and couldn't find him. None of his friends would tell me any information about where he was.
But I got in that car and just took off and didn't look back.
And when we got home without him, I walked directly to his room. My wife walked in with me, and we're standing there together, I remember, and just we were kind of numb.
What I experienced the most was just absolute loneliness. I remember not being able to eat a lot, and I was missing school. I was sick, hungry, cold, sleeping in someone's car. It was pretty bad. Eventually, the band started picking up more shows, and the last person I expected to see in the back of the hall was my dad.
I came to this club and walked in, went immediately to the back wall, and I came to see my son. I was really concerned about what he was doing, and I don't think he knew I was there. I didn't want him to know I was here. I wanted to see him.
I think he was just there just to show me that he still loved me and that he was praying for me. About 5 or 6 months later, after running away, somebody got a hold of me and said, hey, your dad's going on a trip to Austin, Texas, and was wondering if you'd like to come along. I called my dad. It was the first time I talked to him, and he's like, hey, you don't have to go to the worship conference. I just thought we'd go see a movie and go get some food and just hang out in Austin.
Just like I was cutting some of the kids from church some slack, I kind of felt like maybe I was putting too much pressure on my own kids.
I don't know, it was just something about the way he was just kind of offering to, you know, be friendly. And I said, yeah, you know, I'll go with you.
It was a matter of waiting and trusting God.
And after the conference, we're driving home and my dad's like, where do you want to be dropped off? And I didn't have really a place to stay. Right behind me is the spot where after that trip to Austin, my dad dropped me off and I said goodbye and I didn't know if I'd see him again.
And he took off down the road. And my wife and I sat there and we cried. It was a sad time. But we prayed also.
I wandered around for about a couple hours and just was wondering what my next step was, and I knew in my gut that I wanted to just pour my heart out and say I was sorry. And I called my dad and just said, you know, what can I say? Is there any way that I can come home? Will you guys forgive me?
It was an incredible feeling, and just that he was calling and that he was really reaching out, and so we went.
He came with my brother and my 2 sisters and my mom, and they showed up and they picked me up and hugged me, and I just remember weeping and being overwhelmed with, you know, guilt and shame and forgiveness and love and all those things just kind of washing over me and being received back into my family.
And not long after that, he went with me to a Bible study.
The leader of the Bible study handed me a Bible and said, hey, why don't you just open it up to Psalm 139 and just read to us what you see there.
When he began to read, I mean, I was like overwhelmed immediately.
It's this idea of God loves me even though I've been running. God's waiting with open arms even though I've rejected him. I remember reading verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, and then just choking up and not being able to read anymore.
I saw the tears down his cheeks. They fell on the open Bible. It was a very dramatic night.
I knew I could not go back to being in the band that I was in or being the person that I was. I said, I'm giving my life back to God. And so I would go to the coffee houses and I'd start playing and singing, and it just felt right, to sing about my faith.
I see how it was God orchestrating some of these things, and we just really are thankful and grateful for that work of the Lord.
And once I allowed him to be everything in my life, he gave me back music, and I was able to use it for his glory, for his kingdom.